And the late Queen's never complain, never explain mantra continues to be sullied by her son, the King, as Caribbean nations officially ready themselves to demand reparations from the royal family, something he stupidly opened the door to. In a bold new approach, national reparations commissions will dramatically bypass the British government and instead pursue individual institutions to secure payments for historic slavery. The royal family, alongside the likes of the Lloyds of London Bank and Church of England, are set to receive letters demanding money by the end of this year. It comes as Buckingham Palace responded to a Guardian article saying Charles supported research into royals' slavery links. Now, woke Charles also told Commonwealth heads of state that he continues to deepen his own understanding of slavery's enduring impacts. So what do you think? Do Caribbean nations deserve reparations directly from the British royal family? Doing battle on this now, socialite, journalist, friend of the Queen, Petronella Wyatt, and the anti-racism campaigner Femi Nylander. Now, you have very strong views on this, Petronella. In fact, despite being one of the biggest monarchists I know, you say that if the royal family were to pay reparations, you would become a Republican?
Well, I think there are 2 points being made here. Again, historical fact has been lost because the wealth of the royal family comes from the Crown estates, which is property they hold in this country, and the revenues they get from this. There is no connection between their wealth and slavery. Now, someone popped up and claimed to have found an ancestor of Charles who lived in the 17th century in Virginia and kept slaves. And to then sort of blame Charles for this is ridiculous, because he was not a member of the royal family. He was somebody called Portreus, and he had a descendant who married a Bowes Lion, and then a Bowes Lion, Elizabeth Bowes Lion, the Queen Mother, married into the royal family. But this man lived 700 years ago, so it is utterly ridiculous.
Very ridiculous. Well, Petronella says it's completely ridiculous for the royal family to pay reparations for something that happened hundreds and hundreds of years ago.
But they weren't even responsible for it.
I did have a little pop quiz ready for my guest, but as you've said, your opinion is that the royal family didn't have anything to do with slavery. So I'll ask a few questions to you, if that's all right.
I asked the questions, Femi. No.
Okay, well then I'll give you the answers. I'll give you the answers.
I've got to tell you, Femi, I asked the questions on the show. These are the rules, but you go ahead.
So one, I'll ask the question to myself and then I'll respond. Which monarch granted a slave ship for a share in the profits to John Hawkins, one of the first slave traders from the United Kingdom? She had ginger hair, and it was
not
a she.
So I know,
Queen.
But
let me continue. A monarch of the UK.
Family, sorry,
can I just finish? Which monarch was a governor of the Royal Africa Company, i.e., the company which transported the most slaves across the Atlantic to the Americas than any other company in the history of the transatlantic slave trade?
Not James, this royal family.
James, the monarchy.
Sorry.
James.
No, I'm sorry. It's a different
which
family.
Monarch agreed? Which monarch agreed?
It's a different family.
It's the UK monarchy. It's
that
the UK
is ridiculous.
monarchy. And
that's like saying that every German should pay reparations for Hitler.
Well, the point of it is that the UK believes that a crown can be inherited from one person to the next person based on nothing apart from their blood or this, that and the rest.
No, that's not true. It's right.
Sorry, you're being very, very invasive right now and not allowing me to speak, because every time you make a point...
over each other.
Every time you're a historian, and the first thing you said here was that the royal family has no links to slavery. So you're not a very good historian in that way.
And then you can respond afterwards, OK?
The point of the matter is that a large portion of the royal family's wealth comes from slavery and colonialism.
OK, let Petronella respond to that now.
Am I going to be able to say anything to
well,
this?
No, that's a big claim that you've made.
Well, I've made a claim and I've backed up.
We're talking about the Windsors. We're not talking about the Stuarts. And you don't understand the British monarchy because there are kings by conquest. So, for example, Henry Tudor, who had no blood claim to the throne, defeated Richard at Bosworth and took the crown. You don't understand the hereditary monarchy in this country or what gives you the right to be king.
Of course I do. It's all that's shoved down...
Sorry, you don't. You actually don't, because you said it's only by blood, and that's not true. And secondly, what about other institutions? You think the Church of England, Lloyds of London...
OK, well, let Femi answer that question.
All of these institutions have a large link to the slave trade. The wealth of Britain and the wealth of the royal family and the wealth of private institutions
like so what?
So what?
So what? Because what about the descendants of Roman slaves, of Greek slaves? No, you're talking nonsense. You're talking about events that happened hundreds of years ago.
And how long ago was the Romans?
Femi,
how long ago was the Greeks? We're talking thousands of years.
I'm talking about was prominent in Africa for far, far longer after it was.
Why don't who sold their brothers into slavery? Why don't you ask
Dan just asked me a question, so why don't you let me respond to Dan's question instead of just shouting over me? Thank you.
Respond, Femi.
So the point is that there are records here. Yes, if in Africa we can have discussions about very wealthy families who are still wealthy because their descendants sold slaves. I'd be happy to do that. I'd be happy as someone who is Nigerian heritage. I'd be happy to do that. I'd be happy to go to Nigeria and have the discussions. I'm here in the UK. We have records. We have financial records because companies like Lloyd's of London are corporations. They take records. They account things. We can very clearly show how a lot of their wealth derives from the slave trade.
You have to admit that King Charles has opened the door on this himself, hasn't he? I know you're a big supporter of him and Camilla, but hasn't he made a mistake?
I think he's made a terrible mistake. First of all, how do you calculate the reparations in any case? And secondly, this is all very, very complicated, and there are many, many institutions that will be targeted. And if he sets a precedent, it's utterly absurd. You cannot go on apologising or paying reparations for the sins of distant ancestors.
I couldn't agree more. Petronella Wyatt, Femi Nylander, fascinating debate. Thank you so much. But who do you agree with on this? Do Caribbean nations deserve reparations from the British royal family? Well, Jed on Twitter writes, we cannot keep apologising for our historical past. Let's focus on our achievements for a change and be judged on our nation's actions of today, not of hundreds of years ago. Alan writes via the email, like many, I wish that slavery had never occurred. Reparations payments could work to help us atone for our past mistakes, and the King should consider it. And this from Stuart. We already give too much money to overseas nations, many of whom are not even in need of it. Our reputation as an apologetic charity nation needs to change. And your verdict is now in. Just 9% of you think that Caribbean nations do deserve reparations from the royal family. 91% of you say absolutely not.